it's just a huge honor for me today to be podcast interviewing Dr. Kenneth J Polke, DDS, FAGD, DICOI. That's fellow of the Academy of General Dentistry, diplomat in the International Congress of Oral Implantology. Dr. Ken Polke grew up in a tough neighborhood in Cleveland, Ohio, known as Collingwood, the same neighborhood depicted in the true story and movie Kill the Irishman, set back in the 1950s and 1960s. This neighborhood would later come to be known as Bomb City, USA, because of the Mafia war, car bombings, and racial riots. Dr. Polke saw people all around him struggling and at times even dying. Ken watched his working-class parents literally work their fingers to the bone to provide for him and his 3 siblings, and he watched neighborhood kids turn to a life of crime so they could possess fancy cars and a beautiful woman. At times, the lure of organized crime appealed to Ken as well, but with the support of his loving parents, a Catholic school education, and a belief in his own athletic abilities, Ken learned how to conquer his own adversities and make a successful life for himself. Dr. Polke did this first by playing professional football with the Miami Dolphins and then with the Cleveland Browns, and then by owning a successful dental practice both in Ohio and then in Colorado. Today, Dr. Polke has returned home to Cleveland, Ohio to give back to his community, much like LeBron James has returned home to Cleveland. Dr. Polke's storyline has caused some Hollywood interest already, and who knows, we may see Tom Selleck playing the role of Dr. Kenneth J Polke on the big screen, conquering your adversities, make the movie Rudy seem like a fairy tale. Man, I can't believe I'm podcast interviewing someone who played for the Dolphins and oh my God, two teams. That must have been, what was that like?
It was just a fabulous, fabulous experience. When I was with Miami back in '74, they were going for their 3rd Super Bowl that year. Those were the years of the no-name defense and Zonka and Kick and Warfield, and it was just a great, great experience.
Wow, that is amazing. And so describe your youth and influence.
Well, I grew up, in fact, if you were scanning through the channels last night on cable TV, there is a movie that we talk about called Kill the Irishman. And Kill the Irishman is a movie about my neighborhood that you repeated there in your bio, called Collingwood. And the movie depicts the true life story of Danny Green. Are you familiar with Danny Green?
No.
Okay. Danny was a local mobster in my neighborhood. Danny was in his 20s when I was just growing up as a youth, 9, 10, 11 years old. And Danny later went on to become the head of the dock workers union, known as the Longshoremen. And I don't want to ruin the movie for everybody. Like I said, it was even on Star's Encore Suspense channel even last night, followed by Jaws was the next movie repeated after that. But Danny grew up to take control of the Longshoremen through various nefarious methods, murder being one of them. And Danny controlled the docks, so everything shipped into the country and shipped out of the country was under Danny's control. Danny was part of the Italian mob in my neighborhood, and Danny wanted to take over the Teamsters. Well, the Teamsters were controlled by the Italian mob in my neighborhood, and Danny had a falling out with the Italian mob because he wanted to become president of the Teamsters. Now, if you think about it, if Danny had controlled all the shipping within the country and controlled the shipping in and out of the country, nothing would have moved in this country without Danny's say-so. So in theory, he probably would have been even more powerful than even the president of the United States. But the Italian mob told Danny, no, Danny, that's our territory. You're not taking over that. We control the Teamsters. Well, war broke out between Danny and the Italian mob. And if you, and again, I don't want to ruin the movie. I don't want to ruin the book for you. But we talk about this in my book. My book is more of a sequel to Danny's storyline. But in the movie and in Danny's story, war breaks out. I was playing for the Browns, killed about 45 of the Italian mob. And the Italian mob had tried killing him numerous times. In fact, his legend kept growing more and more and more every time they tried killing Danny, but they couldn't. The ironic thing of the story is I was going through Case West Reserve Dental School here in Cleveland at the time when they finally did kill Danny in '78. And Danny was leaving an emergency dental visit out of Dr. Alfonso Rossi's office, and someone had told the mob that Danny was there for an emergency toothache, and they exploded the car up next to Danny's, and that's how the Italian mob finally ended up killing him. But that's what my youth was like coming out of that neighborhood. And these mobsters, we knew they were different than all the other fathers in the neighborhood. We would play our Little League games, and we would see them there during the middle of the day, and they would be there in nice cars, nice suits, and they never seemed to work. So at that young age of 9, 10, 11 years old, we didn't know exactly what they did for a living, but we knew they were different than all the other fathers in the neighborhood.
Wow. Now that was coming in or out of a boat on the Great Lake by Cleveland. This was Cleveland you're growing up in, right?
Correct.
So the ships coming in on the Great Lake to the Cleveland Harbor?
No, these are ships across the whole country, whether it be the ports in Frisco, the ports in LA, ports in Houston, ports in Louisiana, New York City ports. Danny controlled all of the dock workers on all of those ports, well, not just Cleveland.
You know what's really romantic about that story is you mentioned dentistry twice, because you know what the longshoremen's are famous for dentistry?
No, what?
They started dental insurance. I think it was 1958. It was the Longshoremen's Club, and that was the first dental insurance in 1958. And I'll tell you, talk about how money's the answer and what's the question. When they rolled that out, they covered X-rays at 100%, and dentists did not own X-ray machines, and the technology had been out since Röntgen. Look up what year Röntgen was invented, the X-ray machine. And when they started covering insurance at 100%, X-rays at 100%, like a domino effect from New Jersey to Kansas to Cleveland, I mean, everybody bought an X-ray machine, which is so different than today. Whereas like CAD/CAM has been out for 25 years, and it only has about a 10% market penetration. But when X-rays came out, it didn't even take 6 months to a year for everybody to go to X-rays. When the air-driven handpiece came out, it only took 6 months for every dentist to buy one to replace that. Remember the old Jackrabbit?
Oh yeah. As a kid, I went to a dentist that had that. Yep.
Yeah. Yep. And everybody had a cuspidor.
Yep. And I remember that as a kid too.
I could tell you a story about a cuspidor, but if I told you, you wouldn't even believe it. But when I opened my practice in '87, there was an 80-year-old dentist in town, and he used his cuspidor as an ashtray, and he smoked 2 packs a day while working on the patients. And I think he was the oldest dentist that ever went to the Scottsdale Study Club. And he had this hideous wig on that was all curly. He was the most fun guy you'd ever eat dinner with. So the cover of the book talks about a mafia-controlled neighborhood. So you overcame a lot of adversity.
Well, I even now, in returning back to Cleveland, I got a phone call from my brother, and he told me about one of the kids that we played Little League baseball with. His name was Glenn Pauly, and Glenn Pauly was just getting out of prison not too long ago, and he was up for murder charges and racketeering and a whole number of other charges that he was sent away to prison for. So if by the good graces of God, there go I. That could have been my brother and I from the lure of the crime, because these folks just lived down the street from us. It's not as if they were miles and miles away. They were part of the neighborhood. And there are stories in my book, Conquering Your Adversities, where we talk about incidents with Danny Green and a lot of history of the Cleveland mob. In fact, the Cleveland mob was more powerful than the New York mob because of the fact of all the cane sugar coming across Lake Erie from Canada. And that's how the bootleggers got their start in the 20s. In fact, my dad's side of the family were all bootleggers. They ran speakeasies. And this is how my dad's side of the family made their living. I've got a very interesting family on my dad's side. He's got two uncles, my great uncles, Frank and Eddie Sims. They were both professional boxers, and they helped the mob in gaining control of the Cleveland area. And Eddie Sims, interesting note, fought Joe Louis in 1936 for the heavyweight title here in Cleveland back during the Depression. Eddie then went on to Hollywood, made a whole bunch of movies with Dean Martin, Jerry Lewis, Humphrey Bogart, and had a rather very interesting career. And after his Hollywood career was over with, he then went to Vegas and became the bodyguard for Bugsy Siegel. So my dad's side of the family had some mobster ties there, no doubt about it.
Boy, that was a great movie, Bugsy Siegel. Was that the name of the movie?
I believe so, yes.
From Bugsy?
Yes.
Are you the only dentist, period, that ever was a quarterback in the NFL?
To my knowledge, yes. Yes.
Well, congratulations.
Well, thank you.
So what was that like? I mean, were you the all-star kid in high school? Or how do you become a quarterback in the NFL? I mean, how many kids play football in college? And then what? 400 get drafted each year in the NFL. I mean,
right.
I mean, what are the odds of going from I played in high school to I go to the NFL?
They're very infinitesimal, very small. There's no doubt about it. But out of my high school, there are 25 of us that have played in the NFL. If you listen to Mike and Mike in the morning, Big Mike, he's out of my high school. If you watch College Game Days on Saturdays, Desmond Howard, Heisman Trophy winner, he's out of my high school. If you listen to CBS Sports, March Madness, Clark Kellogg, who's one of the analysts for CBS Sports, he's out of my high school as well. So my high school was very prolific in sports coming out of that neighborhood. And it was either sports or it was organized crime. It was the only way you were going to provide for yourself a good living coming out of that neighborhood.
Wow. That is just amazing. So what's the name of that high school?
The name of the high school was Cleveland St. Joe's. It was an all-boys Catholic school. So if you weren't Catholic, although everybody predominantly was because it was all predominantly Italian neighborhood, you either went to St. Joe's or you went to Collingwood High School, which was the public school. And my parents went without. They sacrificed their whole lives to provide for us to get a better education. And an education was one other way of getting out of that neighborhood. So that's what my folks decided to do, and they sent us there. And I have nothing but great respect for that high school and very proud to be a St. Joe Viking. But there's a lot of us out there that have done very well.
All my schooling was Catholic. I went to Blessed Sacrament, then St. Pat's, then Bishop Carroll High School, then Creighton University, and man, it's just different in a Catholic school. I mean, I remember one time my friend said something he said something snappy, smartass back to the priest, and you know how you have the door going into the classroom, then right next to it is a window pane.
Right.
He threw him through the window pane.
Oh, wow.
And then when his dad found out that what he had said, what he lipped off to the priest or said, hell no, or do it yourself or whatever, his dad then took a belt to him 10 times. I mean, when I grew up, all of my friends' policy was that if you get in trouble at school, he said, my dad would say, okay, if you go to the principal's office and get 10 swats, you come home, I'm giving you 100.
Yeah.
And so all the parents backed the teachers, and it's so different than today. Everyone's a snowflake and has feelings, and you just don't have that. My two oldest sisters, after Bishop Carroll, went straight into the nunnery, and it's a highly more disciplined academic experience.
Isn't that amazing, Howard? You would get a beating from the nuns, you'd get the paddle, you'd come home and you'd get another beating. My God!
I remember one time. I brought this little moo can where if you turn it upside down, it makes like a cow, like moo. And my buddy sat next to me, John Lease, who's now an endodontist in Los Angeles. I turned that over, but I put it in his desk, and he didn't know what was going on. Everybody started laughing. But anyway, Sister Mary Aloysia found out it was me. She slapped me so hard in the face that 3 hours later, people were looking at me saying, did somebody slap you? I see a handprint on your face. I mean, yeah, you can argue all you want. It kind of reminds me of that very controversial coach, Bobby Knight.
Bobby Knight, Indiana.
And it's like, okay, well, you might not like that, but they do that in the Marine Corps, and he's dealing with a lot of young boys, and everybody has different leadership styles, but his record kind of spoke for himself. And you could have gone and played for any other high school or college in the United States. What did you think of Bobby Knight? Do you think he was over the top discipline, or do you think they should have left him alone?
Well, what he's noted for and famous for is that one scene of throwing the chair. He probably could have done without that. But you ask his players that have played for him, they have nothing but just amazing amount of respect for him and the values that they learned from him, the self-discipline, the self-sacrifice, all of those values that we don't seem to hold near and dear anymore. But those players have got a tremendous amount of respect for him. So,
I remember one time I lost a wrestling match, and my coach, Tony Hager, threw my, the warm-up jacket you put over your deal when you're done. He threw it at my face, but it had that zipper thing, and that zipper just tinged my front tooth. I mean, I thought he knocked out my tooth, but I messed up. I completely messed up, and I went back down, and I sat down, and I thought about it the rest of the game. Like, why did I do that? I mean, the guy had my head, and I didn't reach up, put my hand on his elbow, and push it off. I was, it's like, it's just stupidity. But anyway, so what inspired you to write a book?
well, in 2010, I ran for U.S. Congress. I had given a few speeches at a few political events, and a few people came up to me and said, geez, we really like what we hear. We like your ideas. We like your whole genre. We like your program. Would you like to run for office? And I thought they were talking about maybe running for city dog catcher or something along those lines. They said, no, we want you to run for U.S. Congress. And I gave it some thought, and I went ahead and threw my hat in the ring and signed up for it, went through all the paperwork and started running for Congress. But I found out that it was a full-time job. You can't run for Congress and run a dental office at the same time. So I had to drop out after about 4 months. But during that time frame, I was giving a lot of speeches, and a lot of folks came up to me and said, geez, we didn't realize your background, the area that you came from, and all the stories that you talk about are so interesting. You really should write a book. And so that was the impetus of it, and we took it from there. And when you live your life, you don't think it really is all that amazing. But when people are coming up to you and saying that you really need to put it on paper, that's when you give it some serious thought and you think to yourself, geez, this probably could help other people who are in a similar situation, coming from a lower socioeconomic background, and are looking for some inspiration. So that is what inspired me. And also, I was thinking back to a time when I was part of the Big Brothers Big Sisters organization, and I had a young black boy that was my little brother. And I thought through the time frame that he was growing up and what I was hopefully able to do for him, instill a set of values. And so I took that experience growing up out of that same environment, and then I thought I'd put it on paper and see if we could help more people that are in a similar situation.
So your book, how do they buy your book? I mean, you got a website, conqueringyouradversities.com. Is that the best place to buy it?
Right. We have the first publication coming out in a week or so.
It's not out yet?
It is officially out in terms of being able to, that it's done. Let's put it that way. This was a 3-year project. It is done. It is in its final stage, which is actually being printed as we speak. So if they go to Conquering Your Adversities, they can order the book there, and then I will ship them a copy if that is what they like. Right now, it's just in hard copy form, and then we plan to have it in soft copy and so on and so forth.
So you're giving away your age when you and I talk about the movie Rudy. That thing came out in 1993. Talk to some of these young kids that just graduated from dental school who might only be 25 years old, might not even have heard of that movie. And what is the movie Rudy about, and how does it play along? How is it close to you and your book and your message?
Rudy, as we all know, those of us that have seen the movie, came from a scenario where he was told that he wasn't fast enough, wasn't big enough, wasn't smart enough, wasn't anything enough. And he overcame those obstacles, and he did prove to himself and to the rest of the world that, hey, if you set your mind to something and you really work at it with self-discipline, you can achieve just about anything. And his goal was to play for the University of Notre Dame, which he never played any games except maybe the last minute or so of the final game of his senior year. So he did achieve his goal in one respect, not in some of the other respects that he wanted, but it just showed the value of hard work and self-discipline. Our storyline goes even a couple of steps further. And although Rudy played at a university level, the same scenario for myself as well. I was told I wasn't fast enough, wasn't big enough, wasn't strong enough, wasn't smart enough, all these other things, and yet I proved everybody wrong that through hard work and self-discipline, you can achieve your life's dreams. And my life dream was to play in the NFL, to become a quarterback. And God blessed me with a throwing arm that to this day is still one of the strongest arms they've seen in the NFL, based on some comments that were made in newspaper clippings. But that's what we're after, is if you put your mind to something, you can achieve just about anything that you want.
You know, Rudy, the movie Rudy didn't really have any famous stars in it, but gosh, the other one you were talking about, Kill the Irishman, which is a newer movie that came out in 2011. I mean, you have Val Kilmer, Christopher Walken. I mean, that was an all-star cast, wasn't it?
Oh, with Paul Sorvino and Paul D'Onofrio from Law and Order. Yeah, it's got a great cast, and we're looking to take our book to that same producer. He's an Ohio State grad, and we're going to look to see if he will take our movie, our storyline, and produce it as a sequel to Kill the Irishman. We also are going to pitch our storyline to LeBron James right after the Cavaliers defeat the Golden State Warriors in the NBA Finals coming up here. So right after the NBA season is over with, LeBron has started a production company here in Cleveland. So we're looking to pitch the storyline to him for a movie production as well.
You know, I love Cleveland. I just lectured there a few weeks ago at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I mean, that was so darn fun.
Isn't that amazing?
And I had no idea until I was flying in that the building is shaped like the old, what is it called, a phonograph?
Yes, yes.
And just unbelievable, and just absolutely loved it. But what is it about Cleveland? Why do you think LeBron went back home? You had moved to Colorado and had a successful practice. You moved back to Cleveland. What is it about going home to Cleveland?
Well, Cleveland still has that hardcore blue-collar mentality that you can kick us all you want, you can beat us up all you want, but we're going to get back up and we're going to face you again. And don't mess with us is essentially the mentality that you develop in this kind of an area. And so it becomes the core essence of your being. And for LeBron, if it wasn't for the work ethic and the self-discipline, even today, it's amazing the workout routine that he, after all these NBA titles and so on and so forth, what he puts himself and his body through to perform at a better level each and every year. And it's that same mentality and that core that brings us back home. We want to come back and we want to help Cleveland out. It's been kicked down, it's been beaten up, it's been badmouthed. We want to come back and make Cleveland even better than it is. And it's amazing what is here. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the Pro Football Hall of Fame, the Cleveland Orchestra, which is world renowned, the medical facilities that are here, the Cleveland Clinic. And one of the main reasons, and I hate even bringing this up, but one of the main reasons we are back here is because of the Cleveland Clinic. My wife had some serious heart issues. She had to have a pacemaker put in. And after they almost killed her twice on the operating table back in Denver, she came out of the operating room the second time. And when she finally awoke, she said, "You get me back to Cleveland where they know what they're doing." And so I hate to say that, but this is one of the reasons also why we're back in Cleveland. Cleveland Clinic, I don't care what rating system you use, they're always up there 1, 2, or 3 in all of the hospital ratings. And their cardiac division is #1 in the world, in my opinion.
Yeah, we're going to have that. What's his name? Dr. Kenneth Bale coming on, who wrote the Beating the Heart Attack Gene. He talks all about the Cleveland Clinic. Ken, why do you think when you go into healthcare, there's all their marketing, advertising, branding at Cleveland Clinic, at Mayo Clinic, at Houston, at John Hopkins, at Scripps, it's all about, we're serious, we're the best. Your wife moves from Colorado to Ohio to go to the best doctor. But when you look at all the corporate dental chains, it's all $49 for a clean exam and x-ray, and bring this coupon on, it's $5 off. How come no one in dentistry sees the path laid by Mayo and Cleveland and Scripps and tries to brand that, hey, we're serious as a heart attack, we're the best. People not only come to our practice from 1,000 miles away, they move from one state to another. I mean, Cleveland Clinic, what percent of their population isn't even from the United States?
It is amazing. I've got a great little story I tell in the book. While working at the Cleveland Clinic, while I was going through dental school at Case Western Reserve, we had one of the kings from the Middle East with his 75 wives take over one whole floor at the Cleveland Clinic. He came in for his open heart surgery. And I worked in the blood bank, so we would get blood ready for the open heart surgeries the next day. And I worked the weekend graveyard shift. And the 2 main surgeons at that time were Dr. Cosgrove and Dr. Loop. Well, Dr. Cosgrove, I believe, is now just retiring as the CEO of the Cleveland Clinic. But their philosophy was always push the envelope to get better and better and better. This king, because of the great service and the great health care that he received, he donated millions to the Cleveland Clinic, which put them on the map. And it is amazing the reputation they have as being the best. I know you had Carl Misch interviewed in one of your series, and I trained under Carl when I first got out of dental school. And Carl's had his office up in the Detroit, Michigan area, which was just about a 2-hour drive here from us. And Carl is of the same mindset. He was bound and determined he was going to become the best at what he did. And sure enough, he did. And I can't thank Carl enough. He was one of my mentors and one of my gurus. And it's sorry to see his passing.
Same here. I actually cried when I heard he died. I mean, it was just tough. You think if that king had 75 wives, he would have died from suicide, not a heart issue.
I'm surprised he didn't want to die. But that's a whole different story.
Can I give people your email address? Because I just love your email address. That is just classic. Can I say it on the air?
Sure, go ahead.
drqb@aol.com. How cool is that? Dr. Quarterback, drqb@aol.com. That is classic. I will never forget that the rest of my life. That is
Howard, I'm sorry through all my years of dentistry, which is approaching 40, that you and I never met and never had a chance to sit down and talk. I think we would have a lot of fun over a few beers.
Well, I was going to ask that. What is that bar area downtown Cleveland where they block off the street? What is that area called?
Well, there were two areas. There was the flats. Is that what you're referring to? Down by the Cuyahoga River?
No, I don't remember the flats. It was a bar district where the streets were blocked off and bricked.
Oh, no car. Sure. Where Progressive Field is where the Indians play, and then the Quicken Loans where the arena is where the Cavaliers play. You're referring to that area there?
I forgot, but I just want to make the point that I love lecturing around the world because you get to see all these better ideas. And when you go to so many places like Romania and some of the Eastern Europe places, the downtown bar areas, they block off from the cars, they brick, and they put chairs in cars. And I'm talking about that area down in Cleveland downtown where they did that, where you had the valet park
that's
your car.
over on the that's on the east side, up above the flats.
Yeah, and that's just so smart. And then I come back here to Tempe and Mill Avenue. And what's the worst thing about Millennials? You can't even cross the street and all these cars and the congestion. It's like, I
Yeah,
wish these
yeah.
people would
The downtown area is progressing. We're seeing more and more people moving back into Cleveland, and I talk about that in my book. Unfortunately, it's sad to say, but back in the 50s and 60s, we had what was known as the white flight. And when people say they're from Cleveland, they most often than not, they really aren't from Cleveland. They're from Northeast Ohio, which is a hugely populated area. But I truly was born and raised in Cleveland proper. So,
you know, we talked earlier about the Danny Green, the Mafia, and the Longshoremen. Yeah, the X-ray was developed in 1895, but it wouldn't be until the Longshoremen invented dental insurance, which I believe was 19. I'm thinking it was 1958. So almost 58 and 5. So it's almost 63 years after the X-ray was invented. The dentists buy it, and the only reason they bought it is because it's covered 100%. And insurance has driven the dental industry throughout its entire time. So what are you doing now? So what is your career like now? You're not practicing anymore. What are you doing? What's
yeah,
new?
I've retired from active practice, and I've just been working on my book. As you probably well know, I'm a newcomer to this, but writing a book and then getting it edited and published and all those things, it's a learning curve for me, so it's something new. But I'm excited about my book, and what I want to do is promote my book, and I'm looking to perhaps get into coaching. I want to go down to Ohio State and sit down with Urban Meyer and tell him that I'm here and that I'd like to come help the Ohio State Buckeyes. So I'm looking to coach. I may be looking at a political career here in Ohio. I may decide to run for Congress. And one other thing that I'm exploring is the buying and selling of dental practices and helping young doctors achieve their dreams. And through my tutelage, I can help them grow their practices and show them the right avenues to take and how to deal with supply companies and all those things that they just didn't teach us in dental school.
Well, my advice is to you. There's never been a dentist as the president. There's never been a dentist as a senator. There's 4 dentists in the U.S. Congress. Paul Gosar from Arizona, who I lived in the same dorm with at Creighton University.
Wow.
We both lived in Swanson Hall. He's practices here in Arizona. Have you met any of the 4 dentists who are in the U.S. House of Representatives right now?
There is one dentist, I believe he was from Idaho. When I was running for Congress in 2010, I met with the Speaker of the House at that time, and I also met with my local congressman, Steve LaTourette, who was also a patient of mine when I was practicing. He and his family were patients of mine when I was practicing here in Ohio. But I flew into D.C., I met with them, and I also met with this particular dentist from Idaho, and I apologize, I forgot his name. Can't think of his name. Memory isn't serving me well. But yeah, you're right. There's about 4 of them that are dentists. How many doctors do you know signed the Declaration of Independence? Are you familiar with that,
No,
Howard?
I'm not. How many are there? You were talking to, how many?
There are 6 doctors that signed the Declaration of Independence. And I'm a firm believer that we need more doctors taking a seat at the leadership table to help run this country.
So the one you were talking to was Representative Mike Simpson, Republican out of
Yes,
Idaho.
yes,
Paul
yes.
Gosar, Republican out of Arizona. Brian Babin, Republican out of Texas. And now there's a new one, Drew Ferguson, a Republican out of Georgia. And I have sent requests to interview all those guys, but I think I think they're a little busy right now. I think they're.
I think they have their hands full, yes.
Yeah, I think they're really, really busy.
Yeah. No, it was Mike Simpson who I met. I apologize, I forgot his name, but
Mike Simpson's the he's the one who's been in there a long time.
Okay, all right. Yeah, he's been there for a while.
You should go to the Senate. You're the first dentist who was a quarterback in the NFL, so you got to be the first dentist who's a senator. Don't go for the U.S. House, then you'll be the 5th one. You don't want to be 5th. You've never done anything fifth place. You should be the first senator.
Well, tell me, Howard, how many folks do you think in this country have played the NFL, went on to become a doctor, and then went on to become senator? How many would there be?
That'd be the only one. Now, there was a dentist from, Mark Spitz was accepted in the dental school.
Yes, he was. You're right.
But he didn't become a dentist. But there was a guy who played for the Steelers, big old lineman. And when he ended his career, he went back to dental school. Do you ever hear that guy?
Are we talking about Webster?
I'm not sure his name.
Mike Webster?
Is that who it was?
It might be. It might be. But don't quote me on that.
Huh? Yeah. But you're the only one that I've heard that was a quarterback. So you're thinking about doing practice transitions?
Yeah, I hate bringing this topic up, but the sale of my practice, because we had already moved back to Ohio, I had turned it over to a broker, two brokers actually, back in Colorado. It was just such a bad experience. I'm toying with the idea that that should be a great experience and not such a bad experience. And I'm toying with the idea. I learned so much through that horrendous experience that I would perhaps like to help a lot of other doctors not have to go through what I went through. Because when you've got an ailing wife 6 states over, you're trying to help her recoup and run your dental practice from 6 states over and then sell it on top of that. It's a pretty hefty burden to bear.
So would you do this yourself on your own website, or would you go work for a firm that does this? How would you do this?
Oh, no, I would do this myself. I would be looking to do, my experience with brokers, I would not team up with anybody. And I hate saying this, but lazy, greedy, poorly written contracts, you name it, I went through the whole gamut. And I'm still ironing out problems right now to this day.
Right. That's tough. So what advice? This is May 29th. This is Memorial Day. Thanks for spending Memorial Day with us,
Yes,
by the way.
and happy Memorial Day. I want to thank all of our veterans out there that may be listening, and I want to extend our sincere gratitude for our fallen heroes that have helped keep this country free. And unfortunately, as they've said many times, the price of freedom is not free. And unfortunately, many have paid the dearest price of all. So thank you to all of our veterans.
I still can't believe that George Washington led 17,000 boys to their death just to break off from the United Kingdom. I mean, what a sacrifice. Can you imagine 17,000 boys slain?
That's incredible.
Just so we could be independent?
In talking to you, Howard, I can tell you're a history buff. And I think you truly will love our book because there's an awful lot of history. We talk about the Kent State shootings. We talk about how the mob got started. There's a lot of history in there that I think you will love in our book.
Well, the best way to market is we got a magazine, Dentaltown magazine, and it's mailed to 125,000 dentists every month. But what's even more cool is it's digital on dentaltown.com, so it's emailed all over the world. You should contact the editor, Tom Giacobbe, and write a book review for it.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, do a book review, and I was going to say for the book review, or maybe even this segue question right now. This is Memorial Day, but next Friday, 6,000 kids are going to graduate from dental school and walk and so that's dental kindergarten. I mean, they think they're a doctor and they're all that. They don't realize they just showed up. I mean, the light just turned green and they can finally start to cross the street. And what advice would you tell 6,000 babies who are 25 years old who just are walking out into a 4-lane intersection called dentistry? What advice would you give them? And would your book apply to them? Would your book help them as they approach their journey?
Oh, without a doubt. Now, it wasn't written for dentists per se, so they're not going to get any detailed knowledge on how to run their practices better, but I can give them some tips right now that I'd love to share with you and them. It was written for the general public. and it's the story of my life, and it really only goes up till about dental school and all the adversities I had to overcome prior to that to just even get into dental school. So the first tip I would offer these young doctors coming out, dentistry is a long, long career. One of my other passions, other than having written this book, is delving more and more into anti-aging. And so I would tell these young dentists it's a long career. It's very physically demanding. And because of that, they need to do everything they can to protect their backs, protect their health, protect their vision. So that would be my first bit of advice. If you can't take care of your own health, you very well can't lecture to a patient or advise a patient, or any term you want to use, how they should take care of themselves. So if you yourself are not in the best of shape, if you yourself do not have the best looking smile, it's very difficult for you to point that out to anybody else. So that's my first bit of advice. Second bit of advice is God gave you 2 ears and God gave you 1 mouth. So what I would highly recommend for young dentists coming out is not to lecture to their patients. They need to ask a lot of questions and they need to listen. And if you really truly listen, this is where you're going to learn how to diagnose properly. You're going to learn how to treat the patient properly, and you're going to learn how to have that patient develop trust in you. Because if you come at them hot and heavy with everything that you have, quote unquote, learned in dental school, they're going to turn you off, and all you're going to see, as they used to say, the backs of their heads, and you'll never see them again. So that's my second bit of advice. And I'm sure you've seen that in many young dental offices, I would imagine, Howard, in your consulting.
Absolutely. What advice would you? What advice you're talking about? Buying and selling a practice. What advice would you give them if they're 25 years old? Maybe they've been working somewhere for a year or two, and now they're going to go buy a practice. What would you advise them on that?
First bit of advice I would give them is you don't have to have the Taj Mahal to be successful. So don't get into every leasing scam that's out there by the dental supply companies. Don't sign any contracts until you know exactly what you're signing. Read it word for word. If you even want some free advice, I'm more than happy to contact me. I'll be more than happy to advise them.
How do they
because
contact you?
They can contact me either, well, you gave the email or
drqb at AOL.com.
at AOL.com. So I'm more than happy to call them. They also.
You want to give out your phone number or website?
The website is conqueringyouradversities.com, the same as the title of the book. So those are the 2 preferred ways that they reach me, and I'm more than happy to help them out in any way I can. But the problems are always in the fine print, and I'm sure you will recall that when you first started out.
So you've on got the cover of your book, is that you as a quarterback?
Yes. When I was about 40 pounds lighter and I had hair.
And that was you're a quarterback for the Cleveland Browns in that picture, right?
Correct.
But you're playing the Dolphins, who used to be a quarterback on the Dolphins.
Correct. Yep. I was a quarterback through my whole career. Yes.
Wow, that's a great picture. You're a quarterback for the Browns while you're playing your other team, your former team first, right, Miami?
Oh no, we're playing the Buffalo Bills in that picture.
Oh, that's the Buffalo Bills. I'm sorry.
Yes, Buffalo Bills. Yes.
Huh.
Yes, we're playing the Buffalo Bills.
Huh. Are they going to go to Canada someday?
The Buffalo Bills?
Yeah,
aren't they there already?
They've been threatening it for years and years and
years.
Yeah,
I know.
So you're saying when they buy a practice, they spend millennials are quite understand the millennials. Their first house will be bigger than their mom and dad's house, and their mom and dad had worked for 40 years. And usually you could go take their parents' square footage and both of their grandparents' home square footage, add it all up together, and that's what their first house is. And they're 27 years old, and they already got $350,000 of student loans, and they'll go buy a house for another $350,000, $500,000. I mean, they just, my God, they spend money.
Yeah,
they complain about their student loan debt, but they don't back out the price of their Honda Acura. They've already gone on 2 cruises. They flew on vacations. I mean, our generation never did any of those things.
No, they spend like drunken sailors. There's no doubt about it, Howard.
Where does that
What
come
I
from?
would what I would recommend they do is take that money that they're going to spend on that big home and those fancy cars and invest it in themselves. I would learn. Unfortunately, Carl has passed away, but there are others that are taking his place. I would spend that money on advancing my skill levels. Is where I would spend that money, and I wouldn't put it all into a Taj Mahal office either. Start small, start very modestly, and then build from there.
You know, they can take, you know, me and Howard Goldstein and Tom Jacoby, we've put up 411 online CE courses that you can take online for less than a cab fare. And they're like, no, I'm just going to get in an airplane, fly across the country, stay in a resort, drop $3,000 on a course and fly. I mean, every time they have a chance to do anything at almost zero cost, they always pick the most expensive way to do anything. They'll come back from a $3,000 course, and I'll be eating dinner with them, and I'll say, okay, here's a sheet of paper. Write down everything you learned on that sheet of paper that you didn't know before you went in that course. And they're just like, it's like, dude, you could have Googled that on YouTube.
Right,
You
right.
could have learned that on YouTube in your underwear, drinking a
Right.
beer. But you had to
Right.
spend $4,000 and you can't even show me notes.
Right. No, Howard, I couldn't agree with you more.
And
Couldn't agree
speaking of
with you
Carl
more.
Mish, I got my fellowship in the Mish Institute, my diplomat in the International Congress on Odontology. But before I went down there, first thing I did is I bought his book and memorized it
Right.
before I went down there. And I couldn't believe when I was down there, it was 7 3-day weekends. And people be asking questions to Carl, and I'd be thinking, dude, that was on like the first chapter of his book.
Yeah.
I mean, you could fly all the way from California to Detroit, but you couldn't buy the book for $100 and read it on the airplane. I
Right.
mean, you can always do something faster, easier, lower in cost, higher in quality if you just use your mind.
But here's the problem, though, Howard. You're introducing logic into this conversation. And why would they want to do anything logical or with common sense? So I just don't get it. I don't understand. To me, common sense should prevail over everything that you do. But the other thing I would recommend is that they expand their skill levels. One of my favorite areas of dentistry was IV sedation. And I did my training for that, and there was only a couple places that you could get that training, but I went to the University of Alabama, and I did my 80 hours there at the University of Alabama. And I found that to be just a tremendous practice builder. The ability to control those patients that had a phobic about dentistry was just a tremendous practice builder. So in fact, I was even teaching IV sedation. I had teamed up with a couple of anesthesiologist MDs from the area there in Colorado, and we were teaching in my office IV sedation. And that was just a fabulous experience.
Now, when you learned that IV sedation at the University of Alabama, was that course taught by the Bear? Did Bear Bryant teach that course?
Howard, you stick to the logic. I'll tell the jokes here, okay?
That was another tough disciplinarian, wasn't he?
Oh, he was, but a winner. Again, he was a winner.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a winner.
So you talk about IV sedation, you talk about implants. Here's a big question a lot of millennials have. You were talking about calling you for help. Did you want to give out your phone number?
Yeah, I can give that number. And that number is 303-818-3076.
303. Is that a Colorado area code?
That's a Colorado code, yes.
I thought that was, but so you kept your cell phone number when
I
you
kept my cell number, yes.
Okay, so it's 303-818-3076. But you know, a big question they're thinking before they even get to you is, should I start my own practice from scratch or should I buy an existing? How are they supposed to get their mind around a de novo or buy an existing?
Well, I think that's going to depend on several things: their skill level, their financial situation. I don't think there's a pat answer for any one individual. So it depends, and then also the location. Are they thinking rural, where there is a lack and a scarcity of dentists, or are they looking at the city of Denver? Obviously, my answer would be no, no on both of those accounts into the city of Denver. If they're just right out of school, my pat answer is go team up with somebody for a while, learn dentistry, how to do it well, how to do it fast. In fact, one of the stories I wanted to relay to you and relay to your young dentist out there, when I was working at the Cleveland Clinic in dental school, they were doing a study there. Cosgrove and Loop were doing a study on their heart patients. And the problem that they couldn't figure out is why were patients coming in with essentially the same problems, having essentially the same surgery done, and why were some patients getting off the operating table and others not getting off the operating table. And they did several studies while I was there, but the main conclusion they came to was that it was the speed of the surgeon that determined whether or not that patient got off the operating table. The longer the patient was on the operating table, the morbidity and the mortality went up dramatically. And the same can be applied to dentistry. If it takes you 3 hours to take out an impacted wisdom tooth, you should have referred that out moons ago. So until you get your skill level to the point where you can do things fast and do them well, then you need to not even consider buying your own practice or buying somebody else's practice.
Regina Hertzlinger out of Harvard, a medical economist, showed that on a hernia operation, if the doctor does the entire surgery in under 5 minutes, it's like a 99% success rate. And by the time you get to 10 minutes, it's a 10% failure rate.
Right, right. Well, like I said, Cosgrove and Loop did that classic study on open heart surgery back in the late 70s when I was going through dental school and working there that proved that very point. So,
but I know my homies. This is how they think. If you tell them, okay, the guy across the street numbs the patient, preps the tooth, makes it temporary, makes temporary first before the impression, so you'll never have reduction coping, work out all your problems doing temporary, and then take the impression, does the whole thing in 30 minutes, and you take an hour and a half. And he has 50% overhead, and you have 75% overhead. 100% of the dentists will say, well, if that guy does it in 30 minutes, it's crap, it's not quality, it's just, he's a hack. And it's like, okay, well, all the peer-reviewed research shows the exact opposite. He knew what he was doing.
Well, let them go tell that theory to Cosgrove and Loop, because the first thing they did with all their surgeons, residents, going through their program is they worked with them on their speed, how to get the surgery done faster and faster and faster until they could do it as well as Cosgrove and Loop. And that is what made the Cleveland Clinic what it is today. Speed, I can't overemphasize that how important that is for the patient as well. Now think of it as in terms of you as the patient sitting in that chair. Do you want to be in that chair for 30 minutes or do you want to be in that chair for an hour and a half? And are you going to have a happy experience with that hour and a half visit? I don't think so. So from every vantage point that you can think of, that 30-minute visit is much better. And I agree with Howard. I agree.
You talk about something else that's, talk about margins and meetings. You say, measure your statistics. If it isn't measured, it can't be beaten. I've never heard that before. I really love that. If it isn't measured, it can't be beaten. That must come from your NFL days. We didn't know someone could run the 4-minute mile until someone ran a 5-minute mile. That is so profound. But gosh darn it, Ken, these dentists could talk about their bonding age until 3 o'clock in the morning. Then you ask them any financial numbers of their practice, and it's like a deer looking in headlights. How do you get a dentist who just wants to do dentistry to look at the business?
Well, from what I understand, a lot of these millennials don't want their own businesses. And correct me if I'm wrong here, Howard, but a lot of them just want to work for the man. And that is why you're seeing the phase that we're going through right now, where corporate dentistry is now consuming more and more of the dental offices across the country. And what you're going to see eventually is the dental insurances companies are going to be the corporations owning those dental offices. So that is the trend that I'm seeing. So it depends on that individual. If they're looking for anonymity, if they're looking for independence, then yeah, they need to listen to you and they need to know how to run their business. But if they just want to punch in and punch out, then go work for the corporations, because that's what they're going to do.
I think corporate dentistry wants Wall Street to believe that, but Wall Street will not take any of those guys public. Not one of them could do an IPO. I mean, NASDAQ would IPO, Snapchat, anybody they'd IPO. They won't touch a dental DSO, and their number one reason is nobody keeps their dentist. Some of these chains can't keep them for a year. The biggest ones can't. Their average associate stays 2 years, but it's the same in the private sector. Everybody who's saying these people, these millennials, are somehow different now and they just want to work for the man, there's not a human on earth that wants to work under your thumb, especially doctors, dentists, and lawyers. They didn't go to school 8 years to clock in and clock out. So the associate turnover in the best private practices and the best corporate dentistries, they all quit after a year or two. So they want their own. I completely believe that. And if anybody argues with me on that, I just say, well, all you got to do is call one broker on Wall Street. Just call your boy from Manhattan and say, hey, how come no dental DSOs are going to do an IPO? And they'll just laugh. I mean, they'll explain it to you in 5 minutes. I've been trying to get a lot of them to come on, but they don't. I guess there's no reason why.
Well, Howard, I agree with you. From day one, I wanted my own dental practice. I wanted to be in business for myself, and that's why I went into dentistry. So I agree with you. But I don't have my pulse on these millennials now. You do.
Well,
that's your forte. That's your niche.
If they want to be an employee, then ask them, well, why don't you go back and live with your mom and dad? They don't want to live with their mom and dad because they don't want to listen to their dad. They don't want to listen to their mom. They want their own house. And they don't want to work for their dad. I mean, humans are human. The human part isn't changing. The human part's not changing. The human part says, I don't want anyone telling me what to do. I don't want any checks and balances. I don't want any transparency. I mean, everything they want the government to be, they never want to be. They don't want any checks and balances. They don't want anybody telling them what to do. They want everybody to mind their own business. They want to go home, their own house, do whatever. And all these associates, everyone that I talk to, is just doing it until they find a place to jump.
Well, if they're looking for help to make that jump, that's what I'm looking to do to help them make that leap.
I want to ask you another question that guys like me and you have no problem doing. But when I talk to dental consultants, they say that when they go and observe in an office for the first day, you say best form of marketing. Or 4 methods: ask for referrals, public speaking to organizations, schools, and churches, write a book and hand it out to new and existing patients. As your budget grows, add direct mail. But I want to talk to the first one, ask for referrals. Every single dental consultant that I've ever met in my life or come on this show, when they go into an office, the first day they observe, and every one of them will tell you, 30 years, and that first day of observation, I never saw one person ask for a referral. They're just they're just too shy. They can't do it. They feel like they're a used car salesman. How come you and I can do that all day long and they can't do it one time?
Well, I think we made it fun to do it as opposed to it being a burden. And we would hand out gift cards to our patients that referred other patients to us. And we would have contests within the office of actually doing that to see how many more referrals we could get just from that type of internal marketing. And we had posters in the break room and we charted those, how many came in from those in-office referrals. And we would give out bonuses to the staff if we broke a record and kept breaking it. And so we made it into a game. And if you take all these things that become burdens, practicing football doubles, what we call doubles, practicing in the morning, practicing in the afternoon. If you turn them into games and you scrimmaged against each other, it made it less tiresome, less burdensome. So that would be my first bit of advice is turn it into a game. And to be able to ask somebody for their friends to be sent in shouldn't be a hard thing to do. Hey, Howard, I I'm starting a brokerage business and I want to help young dentists sell their practice or find a practice to buy, what have you. How would you like to send me some of the people that you know that are in the market for doing that? Now, how long did that take me to do? How long did that take me to ask you, Howard?
Right. Hey,
I don't understand it. I really don't understand
speaking
it.
of finding practices and all that, you know, Dentaltown has 250,000 dentists on the website, and it's had free classified ads, but it doesn't cost anything to put a classified ad. There's 6,050 ads in there right now. So there's dental students looking to buy a practice. There's older dentists looking to sell a practice. But I tell you what, the best way to look for leads for yourself or whatever is start posting on that practice transition deal and following those classified ads because they're free. And there's over 1,000 unique dentists a day on those classified ads. And right now, you know, these kids walking out of school, they can post a looking for a job just like you could on Monster Job. I mean, you could put your photo, you could put a PDF, you could do all
Right.
those things. But it's a great place to lead.
Well, I appreciate the tidbit. Of course, you're going to send us people our way because now you and I are very good friends, correct?
That's right. That is absolutely right. I'm going to come visit you at Cleveland. I'll definitely come there when I get my
Well, you
heart
need
attack.
to, Howard. I think we'd have a good time. We'll go see an Indians game, go check out the Cavs. Who knows? Our Browns may even have a good team this year.
It's so tribal. I love the Arizona Cardinals. So when I was in dental school, I was at Kansas didn't have a football team, so they had Kansas City Chiefs, and then they had the St. Louis Cardinals football team. And then when I left dental school and came to Arizona, the Arizona Cardinals, the St. Louis sold the team or whatever and moved it to Phoenix. So I've been big fans. One last thing: public speaking to organizations, schools, and churches. I mean, February is Dental Health Month. I mean, I've always gone into all the second grade classes, the third grade classes. I just think that was great. And you know what my secret recipe was for the church? I figured there's this really nice dentist in where my sister's a nunnery in Lake Elmo, Minnesota, and he not only fixed up my sister for free, but all the nuns in there. And my other sister in Wichita, Dr. Peltzer, you know, did dentistry for all the Immaculate Heart of Mary nuns for free. So I thought, you know what, I'll pay back. So I went to the local churches around my area, and I said, hey, someone, you know, 2 dentists are doing my sister's for free. I'll do, you know, you for free. And if they weren't Catholic, you know, they're Lutheran, had wives and kids and everything. But I still think that was the best marketing I ever did in my life. I mean, I fixed up, you know, half dozen churches, pastors and priests and rabbis, and so many, you would not believe how many people asked their priest and rabbi and Lutheran and Mennonite pastor, I'm looking for a dentist. They say, oh my God, my boy Howard Farran. And then for charity, you know, you can't say you do charity because everybody that wants charity is, you know, 50 pounds overweight, smokes a pack a day, spends $100 a month on weed. But I told the priest, I said, but if you truly know someone needs help, here's my card. You just write, fix them up, and you sign it, and I'll do it, no questions asked. So when they sent in charity, it was truly someone down on their luck. So they were pre-screened.
And Howard, we did the same thing. See, great minds think alike, Howard. And we did the same thing. We would tell the priests, the pastors, the ministers, the rabbis in the area, if you truly, truly have somebody in need that's really down on their luck, we'll do what we can to help them out within restrictions. And yes, it was a great practice builder. And the community loved it because you were there, you showed that you cared. And getting back to one of my original thoughts was people don't need to know what you know. They want to know that you care. And that's the first thing. Show that you care and that you're not there to bilk them, and they'll send everybody and anybody to you. So that's a great idea, Howard. Love it.
Can you and we went 5 minutes over the hour. I'll just end on this note. You know, you think when you're doing cosmetic dentistry that it's all on these young, beautiful girls that are going to be runway models. When I look back at my 30 years of cosmetic dentistry, the most of all the cosmetic veneers I did were on 60, 70, 80-year-old ladies. And the best marketing I ever did is one of those ministers, I can't say his name, Well, he was a Lutheran minister, so now you're down to 2 churches in Ahwatukee, so it's got to be okay. His name's Don, but anyway, he told me. He said, I'm up there, as a pastor, and he says, I think my teeth look horrible, and I said, well, then you should do veneers. So I made him these 10 veneers, and he wanted them big and white and long and all that stuff. Oh my God! You know how many little old ladies went up to him and said, "Who did your teeth?" And he said, "Howard Farran." I had more 70, 80-year-old ladies coming in saying, now he's the most handsome pastor. He's so handsome. I want to get my teeth done. And it was amazing. I did free veneers on a Lutheran minister and got 20 veneer cases from retired women. I mean, I remember one woman.
Howard, that's a great story.
Yeah.
That is a great story.
I'll tell you,
and
go ahead.
And you got a lot of satisfaction out of that, didn't you?
Oh, it's always fun. It's just always fun. We're in the people business. And if you have fun with people, you'll love your career. And if you don't
that's
like
the other
people,
thing too is if you do everything with a sense of humor as well, it goes a long way. People appreciate, because being in the dental chair is the last thing they want to do. But if you can entertain them to a certain degree, and if you've got a self-deprecating sense of humor, boy, they love that. They really think you're human. And if you put up pictures of yourself and your family, like we had a wall of fame. I had my football pictures up. The parents would bring in their kids in their football gear or their baseball gear or soccer gear, and we had a wall of fame. And the parents loved the idea that they could bring in their kids' pictures. And those are all the things that make you human, and that's what they want to know. You're their doctor, but you're also a human being.
Visit his website, Conquering Your Adversities. Ken, thank you so much for spending an hour today with me and my homies. I had an amazing time.
Oh, no, thank you, Howard. This was a treat and a pleasure. I'm glad we finally had a chance to meet and to talk. Thank you.
Okay, buddy. Next time we'll be drinking a beer in Cleveland.
Sounds great. My treat.
We'll meet the next April when they induct me into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Very good. Very good.
I don't think I could ever play in the NFL, but I can sing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star while playing it on a piano.
Howard, that's great. Thank you.
All right, buddy.
Have a good one.